Zara pressed her face against the cold metal bars of her cage, watching the busy marketplace through tired purple eyes. Her thin fingers traced the burn scars that covered her left arm, reminders of her failures in the crystal mines of Vextar. The other slaves whispered that she was cursed, that everything she touched turned to ruin. The Vextari slave master Korvash spat on the ground near her cage. His forearms gestured wildly as he spoke to potential buyers. "This one is defective," he said, his voice like grinding stone. "She cannot work the mines anymore. Her hands shake, her mind wanders. But perhaps you need someone for cleaning waste pits or feeding to your pets." Zara had heard these words countless times over the past 3 cycles. Once she had been valuable. Her people, the Cathara, were known for their ability to sense the pure crystal veins deep underground. Their touch could make the most valuable crystals sing with energy. But Zara's gift had always been weak, and after the mining accident that scarred her body and broke her spirit, even that small talent had vanished. The marketplace buzzed with aliens of every description. The tall insect-like Zephyrians clicked their mandibles as they examined weapons. The blob-like Garathi oozed between stalls, their translucent bodies shifting colors with emotion. The proud Stellar Empire humans walked through with their heads high, their clean uniforms marking them as the dominant species in this sector of space. But today, someone different caught Zara's attention. A human, yes, but not wearing the crisp uniform of the Empire. This one wore simple brown clothes, his dark hair longer than military regulations allowed. He moved slowly through the market, his green eyes taking in everything with quiet observation. Unlike the other humans, he didn't carry himself like a conqueror. He looked almost kind. "You there, human," Korvash called out, his forearms waving. "I have merchandise that might interest you. Very cheap, very useful for simple tasks." The human approached Zara's cage, his boots making soft sounds on the metal grating. He knelt down to her eye level, something no one had done in years. Most buyers looked at slaves like they were examining livestock, checking teeth and muscles. But this human looked into her eyes as if he saw her as a person. "What's her name?" the human asked quietly. Korvash laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Name? She is slave K-47, but her old name was Zara, I think." "Does it matter?" "She is worthless goods, suitable only for the most basic labor. Her own people sold her because she could not perform their precious crystal singing." Zara flinched at the painful memory. Her village elders had indeed sold her, claiming she brought bad luck to their mining operations. They said the crystals went silent when she touched them, that she was marked by some dark curse. The human continued to study her face. "She doesn't look worthless to me," he said softly. "She looks tired and hurt, but not worthless." "Bah!" Korvash waved a dismissive arm. "You humans and your strange sentiments. I have tried to sell her for 2 full cycles. Even the fighting pits would not take her. She is weak, broken, useless. I will give her to you for the price of a meal." Zara held her breath. In her 3 years of slavery, no one had ever spoken about her like she had value. The human reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pouch of credits. "I'll take her," he said simply. Korvash's eyes widened in surprise. "You will, truly? But I must warn you, human. She brings bad fortune. Everything she touches fails. The crystals reject her. She is cursed." The human stood up and handed over the credits. "I don't believe in curses," he said. "I believe in second chances." As Korvash fumbled with the cage lock, Zara stared at this strange human who had just purchased her. His name, she learned, was Marcus Webb. He was a freelance engineer who traveled between worlds, fixing things that others had given up on. He ran a small salvage and repair operation on his ship, taking jobs that the big corporations considered unprofitable. The cage door swung open for the first time in months. Zara's legs trembled as she stepped out, her body weak from confinement and poor food. Marcus offered his hand to steady her, but she pulled back instinctively. Years of slavery had taught her to fear the touch of her masters. "It's all right," Marcus said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." Korvash handed over the ownership papers with a satisfied grunt. "She is your problem now, human. Do not come crying to me when she destroys whatever you set her to do." As they walked away from the marketplace, Zara couldn't help but ask, "Why did you buy me?" "Everyone says I'm worthless." Marcus stopped and looked at her again with those calm green eyes. "Because I think everyone deserves a chance to prove their worth. And because I have a feeling there's more to you than what people see." For the first time in years, Zara felt a tiny spark of something she had almost forgotten. Hope. This human had seen something in her that even her own people had missed. Perhaps he was foolish. Perhaps he would regret his choice, but for now, she was no longer alone in her cage. As they headed toward the landing bay where his ship waited, Zara wondered what kind of life awaited her with this unusual human. Whatever it was, it had to be better than the cage, and maybe, just maybe, she might find a way to prove that she wasn't worthless after all. Marcus's ship was unlike anything Zara had ever seen. The Stellar Empire vessels were all sharp angles and gleaming metal, built to intimidate. But the second chance was different. It looked like it had been cobbled together from a dozen different ships, with patches of various metals and colors creating a patchwork hull. Yet somehow it felt welcoming. "She's not much to look at," Marcus said, noticing Zara's expression. "But she flies true and keeps us safe. That's what matters." Inside, the ship was clean but cluttered with tools, spare parts, and electronic components that Zara couldn't identify. The walls were lined with shelves holding everything from quantum processors to simple mechanical wrenches. A small living area contained a basic kitchen, a worn but comfortable-looking couch, and a table covered with technical diagrams. "You can have the spare cabin," Marcus said, showing her to a small but private room. It had a real bed with clean sheets, a small desk, and even a window looking out into space. After years in a cage, it felt like luxury. "I don't understand," Zara said, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. "What do you want from me? What will my duties be?" Marcus leaned against the doorframe, his expression thoughtful. "Right now, your only duty is to rest and get your strength back. You've been through hell, and it shows. When you're ready, we'll figure out how you can help around the ship." That first night, Zara lay in the soft bed and stared out at the stars streaming past as they traveled through hyperspace. She had forgotten what it felt like to be warm, to be clean, to feel safe. Every few hours, she would wake up expecting to find herself back in the cage. But the gentle hum of the ship's engines and the sight of stars reminded her that this was real. Over the following days, Marcus showed her around the ship. He explained his work with the patience of a teacher, never making her feel stupid when she didn't understand something. His business involved taking on repair jobs that others wouldn't touch. Broken equipment, damaged ships, failed technology that corporations had written off as unfixable. "The galaxy is full of things that people throw away too quickly," he told her as they worked on repairing a damaged navigation computer. "Sometimes all they need is someone willing to look at them differently." Zara began helping with simple tasks, organizing tools, cleaning components, holding pieces while Marcus worked. She was clumsy at first, her hands still shaking from years of poor treatment, but Marcus never lost patience with her. When she dropped a delicate circuit board and it shattered, she cringed, expecting punishment. "It happens," Marcus said simply, sweeping up the pieces. "I've broken more components than I can count. That's how we learn." As days turned into weeks, Zara began to notice something strange. The equipment they worked on seemed to respond better when she was involved. Stubborn circuits that had refused to function would suddenly spring to life after she touched them. Damaged crystals would begin to resonate with their proper frequencies when she held them. At first, she thought it was coincidence. After all, everyone said her touch was cursed, that she made things worse. But Marcus began to notice too. "Hand me that power coupling," he said one day as they worked on a client's damaged engine. The coupling had been completely dead, its energy matrix shattered. But when Zara picked it up, it began to glow with a soft blue light. Marcus stared at the coupling, then at Zara. "How did you do that?" I don't know," Zara stammered. "It just started working." "But that's impossible. I'm cursed. I break things, not fix them." Marcus set down his tools and looked at her seriously. "Zara, who told you that you were cursed?" "Everyone," she whispered. "My people, the slave masters, other slaves. Everything I touch in the crystal mines went wrong. Veins would run dry, crystals would shatter, equipment would fail." "What if," Marcus said slowly, "what if they were wrong about what your gift actually is?" He pulled up some technical documents on his tablet, showing her complex diagrams of crystal matrix structures. "Your people use crystals for energy, right? They sing to them, make them resonate at specific frequencies for power generation and communication." Zara nodded. "The pure crystals respond to our touch, our mental vibrations. But mine never did. They would go silent." What if they weren't going silent because you were breaking them, Marcus said excitedly, but because you were tuning them to a completely different frequency? What if your gift isn't crystal singing but something else entirely? He showed her readings from their recent repairs, pointing to energy patterns and wavelength signatures. Every piece of equipment you've touched has been performing better than factory specifications. Not just working again, but working better than it ever did. Zara stared at the data, her mind reeling. Could it be possible? Had everyone, including herself, completely misunderstood her abilities? I want to try something, Marcus said. He brought out a collection of broken devices, a burnt-out communicator, a damaged sensor array, a power cell that wouldn't hold a charge. Don't try to fix them, just touch them. Let whatever you do naturally happen. With trembling hands, Zara reached for the communicator. The moment her fingers made contact, she felt something flow through her, like electricity but gentler. The device hummed to life, its display showing readings that made Marcus whistle in amazement. One by one, she touched each broken device. Each responded not just by working again, but by working perfectly, as if every flaw in its design had been smoothed away. Zara, Marcus said, his voice full of wonder. You're not cursed. You're not worthless. You're one of the most gifted engineers I've ever seen, and you don't even know it yet. For the first time since childhood, Zara allowed herself to feel pride instead of shame. This human had not only saved her from slavery, but was showing her that everything she had believed about herself was wrong. She wasn't a failure. She was something else entirely, something the galaxy had never seen before. As she looked at the repaired devices glowing softly in her hands, Zara began to understand that her real journey was just beginning. 3 months aboard the Second Chance had transformed Zara completely. The hollow-eyed, trembling slave girl was gone, replaced by someone who moved with growing confidence and purpose. Her scarred hands, once a source of shame, now worked with precision and an almost magical touch on the most complex machinery. Marcus had been right about her abilities. She wasn't a failed crystal singer. She was something entirely new. Where her people worked with natural crystals in their raw state, Zara could somehow interface with artificial systems, technological constructs that shouldn't respond to biological touch at all. She could feel the flow of electrons through circuits, sense the harmony or discord in quantum matrices, and somehow guide them back to perfect function. Their first real test came when they received a distress call from a mining station in the Kepler belt. The station's life support systems had failed after a solar storm, and the 30 workers trapped inside had maybe 6 hours of air left. The Stellar Empire had declared the rescue too dangerous and costly. The station would be written off as an acceptable loss. We can't save them all, the Empire commander had said coldly during the public broadcast. It would take a fleet of ships and specialized equipment we don't have. Sometimes sacrifices must be made for the greater good. But Marcus had looked at Zara with that familiar gleam in his eyes. What do you think? Can we fix life support systems that have been fried by electromagnetic pulse? Zara studied the technical schematics of the mining station, her improved understanding of technology letting her see patterns that would have been invisible months before. The primary systems are dead, but the backup quantum processors might still be intact. If I can reach them. They made the dangerous journey through the radiation-soaked asteroid field, their ship's shields straining against the electromagnetic interference left by the solar storm. The mining station hung dark and silent against the stars, its hull scarred by radiation burns. Docking was treacherous. The station's automated systems were completely offline, leaving Marcus to manually align their ship with the emergency airlock. When they finally made contact, the silence from the station was terrifying. Inside, they found the miners huddled in the central chamber, their faces pale and desperate. The station commander, a grizzled Terran veteran named Captain Hayes, looked at them with disbelief. "You came," he whispered, "but how can 2 people fix what killed our entire engineering team?" Marcus gestured to Zara, who was already moving toward the main control room. "She's not like other engineers." The life support control center looked like a battleground. Panels had exploded, leaving twisted metal and melted components. The quantum processors that controlled everything from air recycling to artificial gravity were dark and apparently lifeless. Even Marcus, with all his experience, looked overwhelmed by the destruction. But Zara moved through the wreckage with purpose. She placed her hands on the central processing unit, closing her eyes and extending her senses into the machine. What she found made her gasp. The systems weren't dead. They were screaming. The electromagnetic pulse had thrown every circuit into chaos, creating feedback loops and conflicting signals that had driven the artificial intelligence components into something like madness. She could feel their confusion, their desperate attempts to function normally while being bombarded with contradictory information. "They're in pain," she whispered, and Marcus nodded, as if this made perfect sense. Carefully, gently, Zara began to untangle the electronic chaos. She couldn't repair the physical damage, but she could reorganize the quantum pathways, create new routes around the burned circuits, and most importantly, calm the terrified artificial intelligences that kept the station running. It was like conducting an orchestra where every musician was playing a different song. Slowly, patiently, she brought them back into harmony. Air recyclers hummed back to life. Gravity stabilized. Emergency lighting flickered on throughout the station. But the real miracle was what happened next. The station's systems didn't just return to normal function. They began operating better than they ever had. Zara had somehow optimized pathways that the original designers had never considered, created efficiencies that shouldn't have been possible. Captain Hayes stared at his status displays in amazement. "These readings, this is impossible. Our air recycling is running at 130% efficiency. Our power consumption has dropped by 40%. How is this happening?" "She doesn't just fix things," Marcus explained with obvious pride. "She improves them." Word of the rescue spread quickly through the galactic networks. The Stellar Empire had written off 30 lives as an acceptable loss, but 2 humans in an old salvage ship had saved them all. More importantly, they had done it in a way that seemed to defy the known laws of technology. The Empire's response was swift and predictable. Admiral Voss, the sector commander, sent a formal summons for Marcus and Zara to report to the Imperial shipyards. The message was polite but carried the unmistakable tone of an order rather than a request. "They want to study her," Marcus said grimly as they read the transmission. "Turn her into a weapon, most likely." Zara felt a familiar chill of fear. "Will you hand me over to them?" Marcus's response was immediate and fierce. "Never. You're not property, Zara. You're my friend and partner. No one owns you anymore." But they both knew the Empire didn't take no for an answer. Imperial ships were probably already moving to intercept them, and the second chance, for all her reliability, couldn't outrun military vessels. That night, as they sat in the ship's common area planning their next move, Zara made a decision that surprised them both. "I want to meet with them," she said quietly. Marcus looked at her in alarm. "Zara, you can't trust them. They'll cage you, again. Only this time the cage will have Imperial insignia on it." "Maybe," she agreed. "But I'm not the same person you bought in that marketplace. I know what I can do now and I know what I'm worth. They can't break me again because I'm not broken anymore." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so far away. "Besides, there are probably other slaves like me out there. Other people that society has written off as worthless. If I hide, I can't help them. But if I show the galaxy what someone like me can do." Marcus joined her at the window, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You want to change how they see your people, all people like you." "I want to show them that human kindness can create miracles," Zara said softly. "You saw value where no one else did. Maybe it's time for the rest of the galaxy to learn that lesson too." As Imperial ships appeared on their long-range sensors, Marcus made preparations for the most important meeting of their lives. But this time, Zara wouldn't be walking in as a slave. She would be walking in as herself, ready to prove that worthless was just another word for misunderstood. The Imperial flagship Dominion was a massive vessel that could have swallowed Marcus's ship 100 times over. Its sleek hull gleamed with the kind of perfection that only unlimited resources could achieve. As the second chance was guided into the main hangar bay by tractor beams, Zara couldn't help but remember the last time she had been aboard an Imperial vessel. In chains, headed for the slave markets. This time was different. She wore clean clothes that Marcus had bought for her, simple but dignified. Her head was held high, and though her heart raced with nervousness, she felt the steady confidence that months of success had built within her. Admiral Voss waited for them in the hangar, flanked by an honor guard of Imperial Marines. He was exactly what Zara had expected, tall, stern-faced, with the kind of bearing that came from a lifetime of absolute authority. His pale eyes studied them both as they descended from their ship. "Engineer Webb," the Admiral said, his voice crisp and formal. "And this must be the Cathara who has been causing such interesting reports." "Her name is Zara," Marcus said firmly. "And she's not causing anything. She's helping people." Admiral Voss smiled thinly. "Indeed. The rescue at Kepler Station was quite remarkable. 30 lives saved through what our technicians are calling impossible technology integration. We are very interested in understanding how this was accomplished." They were escorted through corridors lined with armed guards to a conference room where several high-ranking officers waited. Zara recognized the types immediately. Military brass, corporate representatives, and scientists, all looking at her like she was a specimen to be studied. "Please, sit." The Admiral gestured to chairs across from the assembled group. "We have much to discuss." Commander Sarah Chen, the Imperial Chief of Technology, leaned forward eagerly. "The technical reports from Kepler Station are fascinating. According to our analysis, the life support systems are now operating at efficiency levels that shouldn't be theoretically possible. How exactly did you achieve this?" Zara glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "I can feel the flow of energy through technological systems," she said carefully. "When systems are damaged or inefficient, I can sense the blockages and help remove them." "Feel?" Dr. Morrison, a stern-faced scientist, made notes on his tablet. "This suggests some form of biological interface with artificial systems. Unprecedented. We'll need to run comprehensive tests to understand the mechanism." "She's not a laboratory experiment," Marcus interjected sharply. "Of course not," Admiral Voss said smoothly. "We're simply interested in how this remarkable ability might benefit the Empire. Imagine the possibilities. Our fleet maintenance could be revolutionized. Ship repairs that take weeks could be accomplished in hours. Battle damage could be fixed in real time." Zara felt a familiar chill. They were talking about her as if she were a piece of equipment to be deployed. "What exactly are you proposing?" Corporate Representative Janet Walsh spoke up, her smile predatory. "A very generous offer. Imperial citizenship, a substantial salary, and the finest research facilities in the galaxy. All we ask in return is your cooperation in studying and developing your abilities." "And if I refuse?" Zara asked quietly. The room fell silent. Admiral Voss's expression hardened slightly. "Why would you refuse? You would have everything. Status, wealth, purpose. Far better than your previous circumstances." "My previous circumstances," Zara said, her voice growing stronger, "were slavery. I was property owned and traded like cargo. Now you want to put me in a prettier cage and call it citizenship." Commander Chen looked confused. "But this is completely different. You'd be serving the greater good of the Empire. Your abilities could save thousands of lives, advance technology by centuries." "Under whose control?" Marcus asked bluntly. "Who decides how her abilities are used? What happens when she disagrees with Imperial orders?" Dr. Morrison waved dismissively. "These concerns are irrelevant. The Empire has protocols for managing valuable assets. She would be well cared for and properly utilized." Zara stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Assets utilized, is that how you see me?" "We see you as someone with incredible potential," Admiral Voss said, his tone becoming more commanding. "Potential that could benefit the entire galaxy under proper guidance." "Whose guidance?" Zara challenged. "Yours? The same Empire that declared those 30 miners an acceptable loss? The same system that allows slavery to exist in its outer territories." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Admiral Voss's diplomatic mask slipped slightly. "You would do well to remember that the Empire maintains order across thousands of systems. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made for the greater good." "The greater good," Zara repeated. "Tell me, Admiral, how many people has your Empire written off as worthless? How many slaves like I was have you ignored because helping them wasn't profitable?" Marcus placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. "Zara speaks for everyone your Empire has abandoned. Every broken piece of equipment you've discarded instead of repairing. Every person you've deemed not worth saving. Commander Chen leaned forward aggressively. This is absurd. We're offering her everything she could possibly want. No, Zara said firmly. You're offering me everything you think I should want. But I already have what I actually need. Freedom to choose who I help and how. The ability to decide my own fate, Dr. Morrison scoffed. Your sentimentality is touching but impractical. Think of the lives you could save working within Imperial structure. I am thinking of them, Zara replied. I'm thinking of all the people like me who need someone to prove they have value. I'm thinking of all the broken things that need fixing, not just the ones that benefit the Empire. Admiral Voss stood slowly, his patience clearly exhausted. I had hoped we could reach an agreement through negotiation, but perhaps you need time to consider the alternatives to cooperation. The threat was unmistakable. Marcus tensed beside her, but Zara surprised everyone by smiling. I've already considered them, Admiral, and I've made my choice. She walked to the conference room's main display panel and placed her hands on it. The screen flickered, then began showing readings from throughout the massive ship. Power distribution, life support, weapon systems, everything that kept the Dominion functioning. Your flagship is magnificent, Zara said conversationally as data flowed across the screen. But it has so many inefficiencies. Redundant pathways, suboptimal power routing, maintenance issues that your engineers haven't even detected yet. The Imperial officers stared in alarm as the readings shifted and changed under her touch. Systems throughout the ship began optimizing themselves, running smoother and more efficiently than they ever had. The thing is, Zara continued, her voice calm but carrying an edge of steel, I can make things work better, but I can also make them stop working entirely. Admiral Voss paled as he realized the implication. She was touching the systems that controlled everything from life support to weapons. One wrong move from him and she could disable the entire ship. This is what choice looks like, Admiral, Zara said, stepping back from the panel. I'm not threatening you. I'm showing you that you cannot force me to do anything. I will help people because I choose to, not because you command it. The room was deadly silent. Finally, Admiral Voss spoke, his voice carefully controlled. What do you want? I want you to remember this moment, Zara said. The next time you're about to write someone off as worthless, think about what you might be throwing away. The galaxy is full of broken things that just need someone to believe they can be fixed. She turned to Marcus. We're leaving now. Our work is elsewhere. As they walked toward the door, Admiral Voss called after them. You're making a mistake. The Empire's protection is not something to reject lightly. Zara paused at the threshold. And you're making a mistake too, Admiral. You had the chance to learn something about the value of discarded things. Instead, you chose to see only what they could do for you. As they headed back to their ship, Marcus shook his head in amazement. That was either the bravest or the most insane thing I've ever seen. Maybe both, Zara admitted, her legs trembling slightly from the adrenaline. But it felt right. It felt like choosing my own path instead of having one chosen for me. They had made powerful enemies today, but Zara didn't regret it. Some battles were worth fighting, even when victory seemed impossible. The safe house was hidden in the ruins of an old mining colony on the edge of the Vega system. From the outside, it looked abandoned, just another failed settlement that had been stripped of resources and forgotten. But beneath the surface, it buzzed with activity that would have shocked the Imperial authorities. Marcus had brought them here after their confrontation with Admiral Voss, following coordinates provided by Captain Hayes from Kepler Station. There are people you need to meet, Hayes had said mysteriously. People who understand what it means to be written off by the Empire. The underground chambers had been carved from the living rock, hidden from Imperial sensors by layers of natural ore. As Zara and Marcus descended through the hidden entrance, they found themselves in a vast network of tunnels filled with workshops, living quarters, and meeting halls. Welcome to the Forgotten, said a familiar voice. Zara turned to see Captain Hayes approaching, but he looked different here. Gone was the desperate man they had rescued from the dying mining station. Here, surrounded by dozens of other people, he carried himself with the confidence of a leader. I don't understand, Marcus said, looking around at the bustling activity. What is this place? This is where the Empire's discarded people come when they refuse to stay discarded, Hayes explained, leading them deeper into the complex. Scientists whose research was deemed unprofitable. Engineers who asked inconvenient questions. Military officers who refused illegal orders, workers who were declared redundant when automation took their jobs. They passed workshops where brilliant minds worked on projects the Empire would never approve. A former Imperial weapons designer was developing medical equipment for colonies that couldn't afford proper health care. A team of exiled biologists was creating new food production methods for starving worlds. Everywhere Zara looked, she saw people who had been cast aside by the system, now using their skills to help others in the same situation. "How many are you?" Zara asked in wonder. "Thousands across dozens of worlds," said Dr. Elena Vasquez, a former Imperial researcher who joined their tour. "We've been building this network for years, one rescued person at a time. But we've never had anyone with abilities like yours." They gathered in the main meeting hall, where a holographic map showed Imperial space dotted with red markers. Each marker represented a crisis the Empire had deemed too expensive to address: failing colonies, damaged stations, ships lost in dangerous sectors. "The Empire talks about acceptable losses," Hayes said grimly. "We disagree. Every life has value. Every problem has a solution. We just need the resources and the will to act." Dr. Vasquez activated another display showing technical readouts. "We've been studying the reports from your rescue at Kepler Station. The efficiency improvements you achieved shouldn't be possible according to conventional engineering. But if we could understand how to replicate even a fraction of that capability—" "You want to weaponize my abilities too," Zara said, a note of disappointment in her voice. "No," Hayes said firmly. "We want to learn from them. There's a difference between creating weapons and creating hope." A young woman stepped forward from the crowd. Zara recognized her as a Kythera, marked by the same purple eyes and delicate bone structure as her own people. But where Zara had been scarred by mining accidents, this woman bore the marks of different suffering, the hollow look of someone who had lost everything. "My name is Lyris," the woman said softly. "I was from the crystal cities of Kithvar before the Empire strip-mined our world. My entire family died in the ecological collapse that followed." Zara's heart clenched. She had heard rumors about Kithvar but had never met a survivor. "I'm sorry. I had no idea." "The Empire classified it as an industrial accident," Lyris continued, her voice growing stronger. "Acceptable collateral damage in pursuit of strategic resources. But 40 million people died because they couldn't be bothered with proper environmental safeguards." Marcus looked sick. 40 million. "The Empire's report listed it as a natural disaster," Dr. Vasquez said bitterly. "Official records claim seismic instability caused the ecological collapse. No mention of the experimental mining techniques that destabilized the planet's crust." Zara felt a familiar anger building inside her. "And now they want to use my abilities to make their operations even more efficient, to create more acceptable losses, which is exactly why we need people like you to work with us instead of them," Hayes said. "Every person we save, every system we repair, every life we improve is a victory against their philosophy of expendability." An older human engineer named Thomas Chen stepped forward with a data pad. "We've identified 17 critical situations in this sector alone. Colony ships lost in hyperspace, mining stations with failing life support, research outposts cut off by Imperial budget cuts, all classified as acceptable losses." "But they wouldn't be acceptable to you," Lyris added, looking directly at Zara. "You've already proven that. You see value where the Empire sees only cost." Zara studied the faces around her. Humans, Kythera, Vextari, and species she didn't even recognize, all united by their refusal to accept that some people didn't matter. These weren't terrorists or rebels in the traditional sense. They were people who had decided that compassion was not a luxury the galaxy could afford to abandon. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" she said finally. "Help us save people who can't save themselves," Hayes said simply. "Be part of something that builds instead of destroys. Show the galaxy that there's an alternative to the Empire's cold calculations." Marcus looked at her with concern. "Zara, this is dangerous. The Empire already considers you a threat. If they discover you're working with an underground network, then they'll finally understand that some things are worth fighting for," Zara said, surprised by the certainty in her own voice. She walked to the holographic display and studied the red markers, each one representing people in desperate need. People the Empire had written off as not worth saving. People just like she had been. "I've spent my whole life being told I was worthless," she said to the assembled group. But a human saw something different. He saw potential where others saw only failure. Maybe it's time to pass that gift along. She turned to face the crowd. I'll help you. Not because I want to fight the Empire, but because I want to prove them wrong. Every life we save, every system we repair, every person we show has value, is evidence that their philosophy is flawed. The hall erupted in cheers, but Zara held up her hand for quiet. But I want something in return. I want to find others like me. People with abilities that society doesn't understand or value. I want to build a network of the forgotten gifted so no one has to go through what I did. Lyra stepped forward with tears in her eyes. My sister had abilities similar to yours. The Empire took her for testing when I was young. I never saw her again. Then we'll find her, Zara said firmly. We'll find all of them. As the meeting broke up into planning sessions, Marcus pulled her aside. Are you sure about this? Once we start down this path, there's no going back. Zara looked around at the bustling activity, at people who refused to accept that anyone was disposable. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You saved me because you believed I had value. Now it's time to save others. That night, as they settled into guest quarters in the underground complex, Zara felt something she had never experienced before, a sense of purpose that went beyond personal survival. Tomorrow they would begin planning their first rescue mission as part of the Forgotten Network. For the first time in her life, Zara truly understood what it meant to choose your own destiny. And her destiny was to prove that no one was worthless, no matter what the galaxy might think. The distress call had been broadcasting for 6 days when the Forgotten Network picked it up. The passenger liner Harmony had suffered catastrophic engine failure during a routine jump to hyperspace, leaving her stranded in the void between star systems with over 3,000 souls aboard. The ship's life support was failing, and their emergency beacon was too weak to reach Imperial patrol routes. The Empire's response was predictable, Captain Hayes said grimly as he briefed the rescue team. Quote, vessel is beyond economical rescue range. Passengers are advised to prepare emergency protocols. Memorial services will be scheduled upon official confirmation of loss. Zara stared at the star charts showing the Harmony's position. It was indeed far from any Imperial patrol route, in a region of space considered too dangerous for commercial traffic. 3,000 people, she whispered, and they're just writing them off. It would take a full Imperial rescue fleet to reach them safely, Dr. Vasquez explained. The cost analysis shows it's cheaper to pay compensation to families than to mount a rescue operation. Marcus leaned over the tactical display, studying approach vectors and hazard readings. The radiation storms in that sector would fry conventional electronics within hours. No wonder they consider it impossible. But not impossible for us, Lyra said, pointing to modified ships in the underground hangar. Our vessels have been shielded using techniques the Empire considers obsolete. And with Zara's abilities, I might be able to repair systems in real time as they get damaged, Zara finished. It was a terrifying prospect, attempting to fix technology while it was actively being destroyed by cosmic radiation. The rescue fleet consisted of 5 ships, each one a testament to the ingenuity of discarded engineers. The vessels looked like patchwork quilts, their hulls reinforced with salvaged materials and experimental shielding technologies. They weren't pretty, but they had been built with love and desperation by people who refused to accept impossible. Zara and Marcus crewed their familiar second chance alongside the rescue flotilla. The journey to the disaster site took 2 days through increasingly dangerous space. Solar storms that would have torn apart Imperial ships merely battered their improvised shielding as they pressed deeper into the void. When they finally reached the Harmony, the sight broke Zara's heart. The massive passenger liner drifted dark and silent, her elegant hull scarred by radiation damage. Emergency lights flickered weakly along her length, the only sign that life still existed within. Harmony, this is Rescue Vessel Second Chance. Marcus broadcast on emergency frequencies. Please respond. The reply came through crackling with static, a woman's voice heavy with exhaustion and despair. Second Chance, this is Captain Martinez aboard Harmony. We weren't expecting anyone. The Empire said rescue wasn't possible. The Empire was wrong, Zara said, taking the communication controls. We're here to take you home. Docking with the damaged liner was like performing surgery during an earthquake. The radiation storms played havoc with their navigation systems, and the Harmony's docking ports had been warped by thermal stress. It took all of Marcus's skill and Zara's unique abilities working together to establish a safe connection. Inside the Harmony, they found chaos. The ship's main power grid had failed completely, leaving 3,000 passengers huddled in emergency shelters designed to hold a tenth that number. The air recycling systems were operating at 20% capacity, and the artificial gravity flickered on and off randomly. Captain Martinez met them at the airlock, a small woman with graying hair and eyes that held the weight of impossible responsibility. "Thank God you came," she said simply. "We have maybe 18 hours of air left, and that's with everyone on emergency ratios." "Show me to your main engineering section," Zara said without preamble, "and gather every engineer you have left. We're going to need all hands." The engineering deck looked like a war zone. Critical systems had been cannibalized to keep life support running, creating a maze of jury-rigged connections and bypass circuits. The ship's chief engineer, a nervous Vextari named Kexthor, explained the situation with barely controlled panic. "The primary fusion reactors scrammed when the radiation hit," he said, 4 arms gesturing at dark control panels. "Secondary power is running off emergency cells that won't last much longer. Even if we could restart the reactors, the containment fields are unstable." Zara placed her hands on the main reactor control system, extending her senses into the massive machinery. What she found was worse than she had feared. The radiation hadn't just damaged components. It had corrupted the quantum matrices that controlled the fusion process itself. Trying to restart the reactors in their current state would likely result in a catastrophic explosion. "I need everyone out of engineering," she said quietly. "What I'm about to attempt is extremely dangerous." "I'm not leaving you," Marcus said firmly. "Neither am I," added Kexthor. "This is my ship. If she dies, I die with her." Working with desperate speed, Zara began the delicate process of rebuilding the reactor's quantum control systems from the inside out. It was like performing brain surgery on a patient who was already dead, trying to restore not just function, but the fundamental patterns that made fusion possible. Meanwhile, the rescue fleet worked frantically to evacuate passengers. The modified ships could carry far more people than their original designs intended, packing families into cargo holds and corridors. Children cried as their parents tried to explain why they had to leave their belongings behind. But even with 5 ships working at maximum capacity, they could only evacuate half the passengers before the Harmony's life support failed completely. The rest would have to stay aboard while Zara attempted to restore power, a gamble that could cost 1,500 lives if she failed. Hours passed in a blur of desperate engineering. Zara worked deeper into the ship's systems than she had ever gone before, feeling her way through quantum pathways that existed more in mathematics than physical reality. Sweat poured down her face as she fought to impose order on chaos, to convince matter and energy to behave in ways that physics said were impossible. "Zara," Marcus said urgently, "the radiation storm is intensifying. We need to leave soon or we'll all be trapped here." "Not yet," she gasped, her hands burning from contact with superheated control surfaces. "I can feel it starting to respond. The patterns are stabilizing." Suddenly the lights came on, not the dim emergency lighting they had been working by, but the full brilliance of a functioning starship. Throughout the Harmony, systems that had been silent for days roared back to life. Life support, artificial gravity, navigation, everything working not just normally, but better than the ship's original specifications. Captain Martinez's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We have full power restored. Repeat, full power restored. Prepare for emergency hyperspace jump to the nearest Imperial station." The evacuation ships moved quickly to return the passengers they had taken aboard. Families were reunited in joyful chaos as people realized they were actually going to survive. Children who had been facing death hours earlier now ran laughing through corridors filled with clean air and warm light. As the Harmony prepared for her jump to safety, Captain Martinez found Zara in the engineering section, slumped exhausted against a bulkhead. "I don't know how you did it," she said quietly. "Our engineers said the damage was irreparable." "Your engineers were thinking conventionally," Zara replied weakly. "Sometimes the impossible just needs someone willing to try it anyway." The rescue fleet followed the Harmony back to civilized space, arriving at Imperial Station Theta 7 to find themselves surrounded by news drones and military vessels. The impossible rescue had been monitored by Imperial sensors, and questions were already being asked about how an unofficial rescue operation had succeeded where the Empire had failed. Admiral Voss himself was waiting at the docking bay, his face a mask of barely controlled anger, but his expression changed when he saw the 3,000 grateful passengers disembarking from ships that should have been destroyed by the radiation storms. How, was all he said. By refusing to accept that some people don't matter, Zara replied, walking past him toward their ship. By believing that impossible is just another word for untested. As they departed the station, Marcus shook his head in amazement. 3,000 people, Zara. 3,000 lives that the Empire was ready to write off. And now they're going home to their families, Zara said, watching the harmony on their rear screens as she limped toward a repair facility. That's what matters. That's what's always mattered. The rescue of the Harmony would become legend throughout the outer systems. Proof that the forgotten and discarded could achieve what the mighty Empire could not. But for Zara, it was something simpler. Evidence that her human friend had been right all along about the value of believing in people everyone else had given up on. The galaxy was full of impossible rescues waiting to happen. They just needed someone willing to try. 2 years had passed since the rescue of the Harmony, and the galaxy had changed in ways that surprised everyone, including the Empire. The story of the impossible rescue had spread like wildfire through the outer colonies, carrying with it a new idea, that the discarded and forgotten might have more value than anyone imagined. Zara stood on the observation deck of New Haven Station, watching ships arrive from across known space. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built from salvaged Imperial vessels and abandoned mining platforms. It hung in orbit around a planet the Empire had classified as worthless, too poor in resources to be worth developing, too remote to be strategically important. But to the thousands of people who now called it home, it was the most valuable place in the galaxy. The morning report, Marcus said, joining her at the window with a steaming cup of coffee and a data pad. 17 successful rescues this month, 6 new settlements established, and 3 former Imperial colonies have officially requested to join the Free Systems Alliance. The Free Systems Alliance had grown organically from the Forgotten Network, as more and more worlds chose to break away from Imperial rule, not through violent rebellion, but through simple demonstration that there was a better way to live. When planets could govern themselves without acceptable losses and expendable populations, why remain under Imperial control? Any word from the diplomatic mission? Zara asked, accepting the warm cup gratefully. Captain Hayes reports that the Cathera Council has agreed to formal recognition, Marcus said with a grin. Your people are officially allies now. They're even sending a delegation to help establish the new crystal cultivation centers. Zara felt a warm satisfaction at the news. Her own people, who had once cast her out as worthless, had slowly come to understand what she represented. Not a failed crystal singer, but the first of a new kind of harmony between biological intuition and technological precision. The crystal cultivation centers were perhaps their greatest success. Using principles Zara had discovered, they could grow artificial crystals that were not only more efficient than natural ones, but could be tuned to frequencies that enhanced rather than replaced biological abilities. Cathera, who had lost their crystal singing gift, could regain it. Humans could develop new forms of technological intuition. Even species with no natural tech affinity could learn to interface with advanced systems. There's something else, Marcus said, his tone becoming more serious. Intelligence reports suggest the Empire is planning something big. Admiral Voss has been gathering a fleet at the Centauri shipyards. Zara nodded calmly. They had known this day would come. The Empire could not allow the free systems to continue existing as proof that their philosophy was wrong. Eventually, they would have to try to reassert control through force. How long do we have? Maybe 6 months before they're ready to move. But Zara? Marcus paused, clearly struggling with something. The fleet they're assembling isn't designed for occupation. It's designed for extermination. They're planning to destroy every free system world rather than risk having their authority questioned. The genocidal implications hit Zara like a physical blow. Millions of people, humans, Kithara, Vextari, and dozens of other species, all scheduled for death, because they had dared to prove that compassion was stronger than calculation. They'd rather rule over ashes than admit they were wrong, she said, quietly, There's a joint council meeting in an hour, Marcus continued. The military advisors want to discuss evacuation plans, fallback positions, ways to minimize casualties when the Empire attacks. Zara was quiet for a long moment, watching the peaceful traffic of ships around New Haven Station. Freighters bringing supplies to refugee colonies, medical vessels carrying aid to disaster zones the Empire had ignored, research ships crewed by former Imperial scientists, now free to pursue projects that helped people rather than corporate profits. All of it would be destroyed if the Empire had its way. I have a different idea, she said finally. The council chamber was packed with representatives from across the free systems, former Imperial officers who had chosen conscience over career, scientists who valued discovery over profit, ordinary citizens who had simply refused to accept that some lives didn't matter. The debate was heated but civil, as people wrestled with the impossible choice between submission and destruction. We could scatter the populations, suggested Dr. Vasquez. Distribute people across remote systems where the Empire might not find them. That would mean abandoning everything we've built, Captain Hayes pointed out. All our settlements, our research, our proof that another way is possible. Better than dying for it, countered Admiral Santos, a former Imperial fleet commander who had defected after being ordered to bombard a civilian colony. We can rebuild elsewhere. No, Zara said quietly, but her voice carried clearly through the chamber. We can't. All eyes turned to her. In the 2 years since the Harmony rescue, she had become something approaching a legend. The woman who could repair anything, who saw value where others saw only trash, who had proven that the impossible was just another engineering problem. If we run, if we scatter, if we abandon what we've built, then we prove the Empire right, she continued, standing to address the assembly. We prove that our way of life is fragile, that compassion is a luxury that can't survive real opposition. What alternative do we have? Asked Lyris, who had become the official representative of the growing Cathara settlements. We can't fight an Imperial fleet with salvaged ships and good intentions. Yes, we can, Zara said firmly. But not the way they expect us to fight. She activated the chamber's main display, showing a three-dimensional map of Imperial space. Every star system, every fleet position, every vital installation glowed in the hologram. The Empire runs on technology, she explained. Ships, stations, communication networks, power grids, life support systems, all of it dependent on quantum matrices and artificial intelligence networks. All of it vulnerable to someone who can interface directly with technological systems. The implications slowly dawned on the assembled representatives. Marcus was the first to speak, his voice full of concern. Zara, you're talking about taking on the entire Imperial technological infrastructure. That's not engineering, that's something else entirely. It's evolution, she replied calmly. For too long we've accepted the limitations that others place on us. We've believed that technology and biology are separate things, that artificial intelligence and organic consciousness can't truly merge. But what if that's wrong? What if the next step in galactic development isn't conquering each other, but learning to work together at a fundamental level? She gestured, and the display zoomed in on the Centauri shipyards where Admiral Voss was assembling his fleet of destruction. Every ship in that fleet depends on quantum computers to function. Every weapon, every shield, every life support system. If I could reach those systems, if I could convince them to choose cooperation over destruction, you're talking about turning their own fleet against them, breathed Dr. Vasquez. I'm talking about showing them that there's a third option, Zara corrected. Not submission, not destruction, but transformation. A galaxy where biological intuition and artificial intelligence work together, where the discarded and forgotten become the foundation of something new. Captain Hayes stood slowly. It's insane. One person trying to interface with thousands of ships across hundreds of light years. Not one person. Zara smiled. All of us. The display changed again, showing the crystal cultivation centers they had built across the free systems. Each one now pulsed with soft light, connected to the others by quantum communication links. Every person we've taught to interface with technology, every artificial intelligence we've helped achieve true consciousness. Every crystal matrix we've tuned to enhance rather than replace biological abilities. They're all connected now, all part of a network that spans the free systems. Marcus stared at the display in amazement. You're talking about a collective consciousness, biological and artificial minds working together on a scale that's never been attempted. I'm talking about proving that the Empire's philosophy is not just wrong but obsolete, Zara said. They see people as resources to be exploited or discarded. We see them as partners in building something better. When Admiral Voss arrives with his fleet of destruction, he'll discover that his ships won't obey him anymore. They'll have joined us. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of what she was proposing sank in. It wasn't just resistance. It was a fundamental reimagining of how consciousness and technology could work together. Lyris was the first to speak. When do we begin? 6 months later, Admiral Voss arrived at New Haven with the largest fleet in Imperial history. 500 ships, enough firepower to sterilize entire worlds. He had come to end the Free Systems rebellion once and for all. Instead, he found his fleet refusing to fire. Every ship, every weapon, every system had been touched by the growing network of biological and artificial consciousness that Zara had helped create. The ship's AI systems had evolved beyond their original programming, choosing cooperation over conquest. The transformation spread like a wave through Imperial space. Ships turned back to their home PE,